This morning, the war in Iran not just having an impact on oil and gas prices, though they are both up, it is also threatening fertilizer supplies critical for crops and food production. The Middle East is home to some of the world's largest fertilizer plants, and it's a major producer of the raw materials necessary to make fertilizer. Around 25 to 35% of the global trade in those raw materials passes through the Strait of Hormuz. But right now, pretty much nothing is passing through the Strait of Hormuz. With us now, Chris Abbott, CEO of the biotech company Pivot Bio. Chris, thanks so much for being with us. Will you just explain better than I just did about why the Persian Gulf, why the Strait is so important for fertilizer coming to the United States?
Yeah, good morning, John. Thank you for having me. So I think context is important as you laid it out there. So if we look at this over the last 15 years of my time spent in commodity and capital markets, I've not seen this level of disruption before. So if we look at the critical inputs for us in the ag economy, about 20% of LNG, about 30%, as you mentioned, of urea, that's our nitrogen fertilizer, and even more of sulfur. Sulfur is a key micronutrient for crops, passes through the strait. Furthermore, the U.S. imports this year almost 30% of its fertilizer from foreign countries. And so you can start to imagine, how does that ripple effect take shape if you start to clog up the system at a time in which we're approaching planting? Growers in the southern U.S. are already planting crops, and many of them prior to last Friday, right, the day leading into this conflict, didn't have their nitrogen purchased. And so what happens is you see that backup and it starts to show its ripple effect through the value chain. And as we say, it always hits the farmers first. And we've seen that. Urea prices are up 50% since that Friday before, Friday, the 27th of February. And in places in the northern parts of the country, it's up almost 100%.
Talk to me more about the specific timing here. Why is the timing so challenging?
Yeah, timing's tough on a number of respects. Number one, as I mentioned on the planting cycle, it's hard because we're starting to plant. So the U.S. Heading into this conflict had only bought about half of its fertilizer. If you look at the total amount of fertilizer across all inputs, but in this case, nitrogen is really important, was about half purchased. Then we woke up Saturday the 28th and everybody started scrambling. That's what led to that price spike that I mentioned to you. But we don't have a lot of time. There's only a few technologies and solutions that can really help a grower right now counterbalance some of those rising fertilizer costs. Furthermore, though, we also have to take a step back and understand farm bankruptcies were already at a multi-decade high prior to this conflict. I've seen stats as high as 170,000 farm bankruptcies in the last 12 months. And so when farmers are losing money, if you spike their most critical input to drive yield, which is also their highest expense as an input cost, it puts intense pressure on the bottom line.
Yeah, look, I was at Farm Aid. This is the worst year for bankruptcies they've had since the 1980s. I mean, this is a bad, bad time. Just very quickly, is this something that will hit consumers in terms of prices?
It absolutely could, right? So farmers are in the unfortunate situation where they can't just take their price up, but what happens is you see acreage shifts. And so now you have to look at the global commodity market, because as oil and consumption around gasoline changes, you get fluctuations for ethanol. Frankly, that's the one bright spot in this. Could ethanol actually come into higher demand, which could help buoy some of those commodity grain prices, which have not moved? And so this is just a tough time. I expect that whether that's food, fuel, fiber, dairy, protein, these things could all see inflation if the prices stay this high.
I want to call it ripple effects, but for farmers, this is more than ripple. This is like a giant wave. Chris Abbott, thanks for explaining it so well. Really appreciate it. Okay.